All right, I believe we are live. Welcome to all of our attendees. Thank you for making the time to attend this webinar today about the Schmidt Faculty Fellowship. Uh, we'll go through a little bit about who's going to be presenting today and what we're going to cover before getting into the bulk of the session. Just for your information as well, this webinar is going to be recorded, so keep that in mind should you be contributing via questions or anything of that sort. Additionally, as we go through the webinar today, please do keep in mind any questions you have. We've left a lengthy period at the end for Q&A, so you should be able to see a Q&A function. Please put your questions in the Q&A function and not in the chat. It just makes it a little bit easier to manage them. And we'll kind of collect them all and answer them all towards the end of the session. If you could focus on questions that you think might be beneficial to other applicants as well, that would be great. For any questions that are more specific to any personal circumstances, we'll share details later so that you can contact us directly. So before we get started, let me just introduce the presenters for today. So I'll just hand to each of them in turn to say hello. So first, Ben.
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Very warm welcome this morning. My name is Ben Lambert. I'm director of the Schmidt AI and Science program here in Oxford. Very nice to welcome you all.
Thanks, Ben. Wendy?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Wendy Keeble, and I'm the Programme Administrator for the Faculty Fellowship. I organise the running of the fellowship and I support the fellows on their journey.
Thanks, Wendy. Nahitya?
Hi everyone, my name is Naritya Naval and I work as the Program Administrator at the Oxford India Centre for Sustainable Development. And I also support the Faculty Fellowship as the Program Administrator from OICSD. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks. Hems?
Hi everyone, I'm Hems Bashir and I'm the Research Collaboration Manager with the Africa Oxford Initiative, or AFOX for short. And it's a great pleasure to join you all today. Thank you.
Thanks, Hems. And that leaves me. My name is Alicia. I am the Training Director for the Schmidt Faculty Fellowship here at Oxford. Alongside our presenters who are kind of in the support team of this program, we also have two of our current fellows joining us. I'll bring them in to introduce themselves when we get to their section a little bit later in today's program. So just the outline of the timeline for today. I'll be talking a little bit first about what the fellowship is. Then I will hand to Hems, who will give you a little bit of introduction to the Africa Oxford Initiative, and Narhitya, who will speak about the Oxford India Centre for Sustainable Development. These are two institutions that really support this fellowship at Oxford, and they'll be speaking about how they offer that support and their roles within the fellowship program. Then we'll hand to Wendy, who will be speaking about what probably a lot of you are interested in, how to apply, and really in the nitty-gritty, where that information is found and useful resources to help you with that process. We'll then speak to a couple of our current fellows, Meghna and Vivian. Again, they'll introduce themselves when we get to that section, and they'll share a little bit about their experience so far. And finally, I'll clue up with a little bit about life in Oxford to kind of demystify that part of the fellowship program before we move into our Q&A. So to get us started, a little bit about the Faculty Fellowship Program. So Oxford has two different Schmidt AI and Science fellowship schemes. There is a postdoctoral fellowship scheme and a faculty fellowship scheme. The postdoctoral fellowship offers fellowships that are 2 years long at the postdoc, so early career researcher level, for AI in the non-medical sciences. That's great. However, it's not the subject of today's webinar. Today, we're focusing on the faculty fellowship. So this started with an award in 2024 for Oxford to provide 18 three-year fellowships, starting in the years 2025, 2026, and 2027, running until 2030. And so we have had 6 fellows join us this year. We are lucky to be joined by a couple of them today as well. And we are currently recruiting for our second cohort. And so a little bit more about the fellowship program. What's kind of the ethics and the ethos of this program? So the faculty fellowship is a space for you to learn and grow within your advancing career. We see them as training fellowships, so we want to create an environment where you have space to learn new tools and techniques, to learn from mentors, from peer-to-peer learning. We want to provide all kinds of space for you to learn and grow, both professionally and technically within this fellowship. And as part of that, like I said, it's a peer-to-peer learning as well. So the cohort or wider group of fellows is essential. Within your year group, there will be likely 6, and then beyond that, there will be the remainder of the other faculty fellowship cohorts, which you'll be able to learn from, as well as the postdoctoral fellowship cohort at Oxford. With these fellowships, we're working across many different disciplines, so it's AI in science broadly, and so there's lots of opportunity to learn in an interdisciplinary way, and maybe see one of your methods applied in a different context and learn from each other. Alongside this kind of training and peer-to-peer learning, we also offer dedicated research software engineering training as part of this fellowship. So something that you may have seen coming up more and more through grant applications or journal publications is the need for documented and really rigorous software description as part of your research outputs. It's something that helps your research have a bigger impact if people can reuse your software. And it also helps you professionally in that way, because again, you're creating more impact and that can help you grow your career. So we offer this training that helps you really ensure that the software that you produce, your applied machine learning in whatever your scientific field, is accessible and something that people can use going forward. Beyond that, all these training components, we also want to emphasize that we really encourage applications from female scientists and those who have had limited opportunities for cross-border education or research experience, as well as those from recently formed or emerging institutes. So we really want to kind of make sure that everyone feels that they are included and have, space at the table within this fellowship. There's no one who is kind of outside of the scope, for instance, based on those criteria. So just a bit more specifically about who is eligible. It should be noted that this is for early career faculty based at a university in either India or a country within Africa. So you should be working at either an assistant or an associate professor level or equivalent. We recognize that there could be different titles used in different countries to mean the same thing. So you can just, within your application process, justify that you are at the same level within that title. So the fellowships are open to academics working in one or more of the following priority application areas of AI, which are climate change, environment and biodiversity, food and water security, and STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and mathematics underpinning research, so medical research. So the key here that you might want to note as well is that even if you're not already applying AI within those fields, if you want to move into that, that's totally okay. You don't need to have evidence, for instance, as part of your application that you're already applying AI within these fields. That can be your goal that you want to develop the skills to do throughout this fellowship. And you do not need to be an AI specialist to apply. What we really care about is finding researchers who are subject matter specialists in the specific applied sciences and encouraging and developing their skills for that AI application to advance that science. So the structure of the fellowship is it's a 3-year fellowship with this kind of 1+1+1 structure. The first year fellows, you'll be based at your home institution. So that's how Magna and Vivian are joining us right now from their home institutions. And the key support element in this year, beyond kind of training planning, is there's financial support provided for either a teaching buyout or admin support or research costs. We technically talk about this as a teaching buyout by default, but recognizing that there's some institutions where that may not make sense, there's other ways that can be used, that funding, to advance your research agenda. So there's that funding package, and then there's also a 2-week visit to Oxford as part of this year. So that will help you to really start your collaborations in person while you will be connecting remotely throughout the whole year. That will really start to solidify those relationships. It'll be some really intensive training and lots of networking opportunities. And as part of that year, we really develop a skill building portfolio. So we work with you on a one-to-one basis to make sure you get connected to the people you want to be connected to. You figure out which courses you want to take throughout your time in the fellowship, that kind of thing. In the second year, you come to Oxford. Great stuff. So you're seconded to Oxford for the whole academic year. You'll be embedded in a host research group. That's someone who you'll identify throughout that first year in collaboration with us. And they will kind of serve as your main contact point academically and research-wise within the university. You'll also be affiliated with an Oxford college. I'll speak a bit more about that later. That's a great opportunity for more networking and socializing. And you'll be compensated at an Oxford associate professor level plus research expenses. And then the third year, you're back to your home institution. So that's where we really see you taking all the kind of skills and collaborations you developed throughout the first 2 years and embedding them back in your home institution context, really seeing your research come to fruition and, hopefully attaining the career goals that you've set out throughout the fellowship to really attain. So with that all said, I'm going to hand off now to Hans to speak about the Africa Oxford Initiative and their role within the fellowship.
Thank you so much, Alicia. Can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. Yes, so AFOX is a cross-divisional platform which brings together all aspects of the University of Oxford's collaboration with African institutions, researchers, and students, and promotes the development of equitable partnerships by creating a thriving community where students and researchers across Africa and Oxford can connect, co-create, and support each other's work. Next slide, please. So the work of AFOX is centered around three interconnected pillars: education and scholarships, research, and innovation. Under our education pillar, AFOX offers fully funded scholarships that enable African students to pursue a one-year MSc degree at Oxford in any discipline. These scholarships aim to open pathways for talented African students to access leading academic opportunities in Oxford. Through our innovation pillar, AFOX connects African innovators with the dynamic innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem at the University of Oxford. And these collaborations provide innovators with access to tools, expertise, and mentorship, helping to grow their ideas into scalable, high-impact ventures. Our third pillar, which is the research pillar, it includes two key fellowship programs: the AFOX Visiting Fellowship Program and the Schmidt Faculty Fellowship. So for the Schmidt Faculty Fellowship, we work closely with the Schmidt Faculty Fellowship team and the Oxford India Center for Sustainable Development to support all our fellows from Africa and India throughout the entire duration of the fellowship. Next slide, please. So AFOX serves as a key touch point for both students and fellows. We provide ongoing guidance and support for any challenges that may arise, whether social, practical, or academic. And we also work to build a strong sense of community through regular networking opportunities, social events, academic gatherings, helping our fellows and students feel connected, welcomed, and supported throughout their time in Oxford. Our goal is to make every fellow's experience positive, enriching, and well-supported, both personally and academically. And my colleague Narhitia will share more about the support both AFOX and Oxford India Center provide for all of our fellows. And thank you all very much. I will now hand back to Alicia.
Thank you so much. And now I'm going to hand immediately to Narhitia to speak about the India Center.
Thanks, Alicia. Thanks, Hems. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Neritya Naval, and I currently work as the Program Administrator at the Oxford India Center for Sustainable Development, or OICSD as we call it. I'm delighted to introduce you to the Oxford India Center. We are based at Somerville College, which is one of the many colleges at Oxford, and I will try to share how we partner with the wider team to support this amazing new fellowship. Next slide, please. OICSD was created in 2013 with the goal of deepening research and leadership on the most pressing sustainable development challenges facing India. Over the past decade, our center has become a unique hub for supporting contemporary research, convening experts, both academics and industry leaders, and shaping the next generation of scholars and practitioners working on India. As an organization, our mission is to create a clear and sustained pathway for researchers and scholars, one that enables them to showcase their work, access mentorship, and collaborations. Next slide, please. Our role in this initiative builds on this foundation. Through this fellowship, we also hope to build a reciprocal bridge between the fellows from Africa and India, and thus between the OICSD and AFOX communities, which means the African fellows who are a part of this fellowship will also be a part of OICSD and vice versa. We are so glad to be partnering with AFOX in supporting this fellowship. Our shared role is to create the conditions in which fellows can thrive intellectually, professionally, and personally. We support the fellowship through several key pillars. Next slide, thank you. The first is research integration, which means connecting fellows to Oxford faculty, researchers, and research groups that align with their goals. Scholarly and public engagement, offering platforms for talks, workshops, conferences, so your work is visible, tested, and amplified. Global networks, linking fellows into a wider Indian and African community at Oxford of scholars, alumni, and partners working on various impactful fields. Professional development through curated talks, skills training, academic support, and opportunities for constructive dialogue across the OICSD and AFOX networks. Collaboration and exchange, facilitating joint projects and institutional partnerships to ensure that your research outlasts your time in Oxford. Our aim is simple. We want the Schmidt faculty fellows to leave with sharper research and deeper networks. And on a final note, to echo what Alicia already said, in line with our long-standing commitments, we strongly encourage applications from scholars who have historically been underrepresented in academia or have had limited access to resources or spaces. Building a more diverse community is very much a part of the core DNA of this program. We are incredibly happy to have welcomed the first cohort in 2025, and we are looking forward to welcoming more of you, and we are thrilled to be able to support your journey along with AFOX. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Nahitya. So we're going to speak to a couple of our fellows shortly, but first I wanted to just showcase our first cohort of fellows. These are all of our first 6 round of fellows on the slide. As you'll see, they come from diverse institutions. We have 3 fellows from India, 2 from Tanzania, and 1 from Ghana. And they also study a diverse range of topics. So it's a bit difficult to put all of their topics on the slide, but it's everything from kind of malaria monitoring to hydrology, the full scope of different sciences within those banners that we showed at the beginning. And also, I mean, this is just to showcase our encouragement of diversity, not by design. 5 of our first cohort of fellows are women. They were the best applicants in our first pool. So again, I would really encourage, academics who have been historically underrepresented, as Nirhitya said, to feel free and apply to this program. At this point, we are going to hear from a couple of our current fellows. So we're going to hear from Meghna and Vivian. I would love if you could both unmute yourselves at this point and introduce yourselves. So Meghna, would you mind introducing yourself to our seminar today?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you for having me here. My name is Meghna Agarwala and I'm at Ashoka University, which is a new institution near Delhi in India. I'm an ecologist, which in brief, we examine the interaction of species and the environment to understand ecosystem functioning. Thank you.
Thanks, Meghna. Vivian, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Vivian Akote Japon, and I'm based at the University of Energy and Natural Resources in Ghana, West Africa. I'm a senior lecturer there, and then my research focuses on AI for food security and then in health. Thank you.
Thanks. So I'm just going to ask you as well both to expand a little bit about your project topics. So Vivian, since you've already started to explain yours, could you just give us a little bit more detail about your project that you proposed for this fellowship and what it's aiming to do?
So the project I'm focusing on in this fellowship is about using AI with crop disease detection. So specifically using lightweight capsule neural networks for the detection of crop pests and diseases. The crops I chose was cassava and then cocoa, to be specific, to detect their diseases and their pests. And then I'm going to design resource constraints models using capsule neural network to be able to deploy on resource-constrained devices. I am seeking to combine feature extraction algorithms like color difference histogram, like text tone, and other feature extraction algorithms to help me extract the features from the various. I'm going to use images, so various images, so that the model can really be trained well to give better accuracy, so that when it's deployed on resource-constrained devices, it can be used by smallholder farmers in Africa to use to protect their crops, to help improve yield, ensure food security, and then also help contribute to Sustainable Development Goal 2, which talks about zero hunger in 2030. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Vivian. Meghna, same question to you. Could you just describe your project a little bit for us?
Sure. So I've been working on using paleo cores to reconstruct the environmental history of central India. And the idea is to identify non-linear ecological interaction in the past to better inform us on future, like with impending climate change, what is the changes we can expect in vegetation, ecosystem functioning, and resilience. So, but this work is very labor intensive and we don't get a lot of taxonomic resolution from the sediment cores. So, for the project that I'm doing with the Schmidt Faculty Fellowship, we will be using AI and ML to classify the fossil pollen taxa with the aim to expedite the data generation and to get better taxonomic resolution. And all of this is to better understand the impact, the basically non-linear impacts of climate change in the future. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. So this just goes to show how diverse the topics are across our cohort. The two totally different aims across the both of you. And I think it provides a lot of kind of color to future applicants to see, exactly what people are succeeding in doing in this program. Now speaking a bit more about your experience applying for the fellowship and moving into it, Vivian, could you tell us a little bit about why you decided to apply for this fellowship in the first place?
Thank you, Alicia. So I applied for the fellowship because the Schmidt Fellowship offers a unique opportunity to work at the intersection of AI and real-world applications to solve real-world scientific problems. And it provides an incredible access to mentorship, cutting-edge resources to be able to learn more and to apply. Then it has a collaborative environment that is very conducive. And then I applied because it will help boost my skills whilst working on my research on applying the AI in real world applications, and then it will also impact the world in detecting the plant diseases and help improve food security.
Amazing. Yeah. It's great to hear that, you see that boost to your professional career and also the societal impact as being, central to your experience as well. Meghna, I was wondering if you could reflect on kind of how the experience has been so far, since you've heard that you got the fellowship until now, kind of any reflections on how things are going in your first year. Oh, you're muted, so you know.
So the fellowship has been really great. So first, there's been a lot of hand holding to identify our learning needs and to address them. So for example, for my project, I need to be able to do some ecosystem modeling. And so I shared this need and then they arranged that in the future, I'm going to have a weekly tutor who's going to help me with learning the maths to be able to do this ecosystem modeling. And so therefore, there's been a lot of this sort of hand holding and identifying the learning needs we need to go into the next stage. The second is the hosts have been amazing. So the host that I've been assigned, Kathy Willis, is a legend in the field. And so when I write my papers, I often cite her in the first paragraph of my papers. So it's really exciting that I'm going to be interacting with her. And I haven't visited Oxford yet but there's so much cutting edge research there on these fields in ecology and computer science. So I'm really excited to visit. Then the Schmidt Fellowship team has been really, really nice. They've made me feel really comfortable and they've introduced me to so many people whose brains I can pick. So, as I think Alicia mentioned, there's a software engineering team and they're going to help you troubleshoot the code that you write. And often that's where we get stuck. So, that's really exciting. Has introduced me to other ecologists who also work on pollen. So, that's really exciting as well. And so it's overall, I feel like I'm going to really learn a lot, and I already feel like I've started the journey. It's also been really, really valuable interacting with other cohort members, and I'm really excited to meet them and learn from them. And as Narhitya and Hem said, maybe do some cross continental collaborations. Thank you.
Amazing. And just to emphasize on, you talked about different, I mean, it's great to hear from my own perspective that you've been valuing the introductions and the kind of development of the training plan. One thing that I think it would be useful for applicants to know about is, could you just speak a little bit about what was your knowledge of AI before starting the fellowship, and I guess how that influences the training plan perhaps that we've set out?
Yeah. So in my PhD lab, there was a lot of remote sensing going on. So I was familiar with AI when it came to satellite imagery analysis. But I would say I was mostly a user. I could use R, I could use Google Earth Engine, and I could use some Python. So I would not say I was very proficient at it. I would say I was solidly a user. In my university we have this program where there's this grant called the emphasis grant, where we can take our problems to the emphasis team, and they'll give us a student intern and some computer science professors who will help the intern then make your whatever your needs are come to fruition. But even though I was a subject matter expert, I was not being able to contribute as much as I could because I did not have the vocabulary to articulate my needs. I could not read some of the more complicated code. And so I feel like I was not even doing justice to that. So I expect that at the Schmidt Fellow, so that was my experience. I had used it a little bit. I was a user, but I would not say I could invent anything new or create anything really new. And so I'm hoping that the Schmidt Fellowship will take me to the next level on this.
Yeah, thank you very much for explaining. I think it's really important for, the applicants to know that it doesn't, certainly being kind of an expert in the nitty-gritty underlying methods of the machine learning does not preclude you from applying to this fellowship. And in fact, it's something that we aim to support. So thank you for that. Vivian, just a question from your side now. Knowing that there are so many potential applicants on this call, what kind of advice would you give them? So based on either the application process or your experience so far, what advice would you have for prospective applicants?
Oh, okay. Thank you, Alicia. So to the applicants, I'll advise that they focus on the real world impact of their research. The first thing, the real world impact of their research, and then they should be clear about why this fellowship is the right platform to achieve that. And then I'll advise them to highlight how their work addresses important specific or societal challenges, and then show an eagerness to be able to collaborate and learn from experts across disciplines and be ready to learn. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Great. So do either of you have anything to add? I asked some questions to one of you, not the other. So if you have anything to add that we haven't covered already, are you happy?
Yeah, I think I would say that that the fellowship is not only about research itself, and it's also about building networks, exchanging ideas, being open, being curious, ready to engage with the broader scientific community, and that will help enrich your experience and when you join the fellowship. So it's a nice place, it's a nice community. You'll be able to learn and then network with a lot of good scientists, and then the broader scientific community. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks, Vivian.
And I second what Vivian said.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you both. I feel like this has been really useful to kind of illustrate how things are going so far. So we really appreciate your participation with the webinar today. So thanks for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Great. We'll move on now to the application process. So all those details about how to actually get yourselves in the shoes of Vivian and Meghna. So Wendy, I'll hand over to you to cover that.
Many thanks, Alicia. Many thanks for our fellows for joining our webinar and really bringing to life the benefits of the fellowship. If we move on to the next slide, please, Alicia. So first off, the essential criteria. And that is to be a citizen and a resident of a country in either Africa or India, to be currently employed at a university or an academic institution in either Africa or India, and that you are within the first 6 years of your current faculty appointment. And just to build on that, you can have been at your university or institution for 10 years, for example, but as long as you've been in your current appointment for less than 6 years, so let's say that you've been at your institution for 10 years, but you've been in your current appointment for 5 years, you can still apply. So it doesn't matter how long you've been at your university or institution. We also ask that you be working on one or more of the following application areas, and that's either climate change, environment and biodiversity, food and water security, and STEM underpinning biomedical research. And then number 5, we ask that you have a promising research idea of how AI can advance and progress a research area corresponding to one of the areas I've just covered. Thanks, Alicia. Next slide. So we have a 2-stage application process, and I'm going to talk you through now those 2 stages. So stage 1, the key dates and times to remember are that the first application opens on the 16th of January 2026, so that's stage 1 at midday, and I'll go through a bit more detail in that shortly, and it closes on the 23rd of February 2026. In terms of what is required in stage 1 of the application, first off, your CV. We ask 5 pages max, and within your CV to include a list of academic publications and teaching commitments. We would also like you to submit a brief research proposal. So we ask for 300 words max on that. With details of your research project and specifically your priority area, so the area of science and why AI. But as both Alicia and our fellows have mentioned, you're not required to be an AI expert. We also require at stage 1 contact details of 2 references. So that's the name, title, contact email address and work address of them. However, we don't contact your references unless you are successfully appointed. So just to manage your expectations and that of your referees, we wouldn't contact them until the point that you had been offered the fellowship and accepted. We also require the contact details of your head of department from your home institution. We do contact your head of department at stage 1. It's a very straightforward process. We send them an email and we ask them just to check a box that says that they are in principle supportive of your application. But it's really important that you manage the expectations of your head of department, because we will contact them at stage 1. At stage 1, we also include a question around and ask you to describe how you'd intend to use this opportunity to initiate and develop meaningful cross-institution and/or cross-border collaborations. The reason we ask that question is that the fellowship is focused on setting up new collaborations between institutions who wouldn't otherwise get these opportunities. So that question is to really sort of prompt you to share your ideas on how you would embrace that opportunity within the fellowship. And then finally, if you have any extenuating circumstances that you think we need to be aware of, any additional support that you require, if you were to be successful in the fellowship, we ask that you provide that at stage 1 of the application. I'm going to talk shortly about the online portal and also provide you with the details of where to apply. So if we move on to the next slide, please, Alicia. So stage 2 of the application, and this is for shortlisted candidates only. We will notify all candidates that have been successful at being shortlisted and also that haven't been shortlisted once stage 1 closes and we've made those decisions. So in stage 2, we request a statement of purpose. We also request a more detailed research proposal. At this point, we ask for a letter of support from your head of department or equivalent. So this is, again, something that you would need to engage with your head of department on, because at this point we would require them to actually send us some information that shows that they are completely supportive of you being accepted onto the fellowship if you were to be successful. We also require 2 samples of written work at stage 2, and that can be a published or a working paper, and we ask that that has been in the last 5 years, and also that you put together a training plan, and specifically any AI related or professional skills that you want to acquire or develop. We don't expect it to be entirely detailed, but we do ask that you give us an overview of what training and support you require. And then finally, a statement on ensuring the wider benefits of this fellowship, and also how you would go about maximising the impact of your work if you were to be successful. Thank you, Alicia. So the application timeline is happening next year in 2026. Stage 1 opens at 12 noon Greenwich Mean Time on the 16th of January. That's when the application portal opens. It's really key that you remember that it's 12 noon Greenwich Mean Time. Because also the portal closes at the same time, so 12 noon Greenwich Mean Time on the 23rd of February 2026, and unfortunately we cannot accept any late applications, so please do check about the timing of the portal opening and closing. Stage 2, 12 noon Greenwich Mean Time on the 23rd of March 2026. That's when the application portal opens again, but as mentioned, that's only for shortlisted candidates. And then because of the clock changes, the stage 2 portal closes at 12 noon British Summer Time on the 13th of April 2026. So again, I can't emphasize enough, please do check those timings. And if you were successful for selection for interview, those interviews are going to take place in June. And just to reiterate, that will be for those shortlisted after stage 2. And the interviews will be held online. Thanks, Alicia. And then this is just a look at what our website, the look and feel of our website is. I've just posted the website address in the chat. And highlighted on this slide in yellow box on the left-hand side is the tab that you would need to select to apply. As you can see in yellow, it's how to apply. Very straightforward. If you select that, that will take you through to the screen on the next slide. And there on the next slide, this shows where the application portal button, if you like, can be found, and where there is lots more information on the objectives of the fellowship, the eligibility criteria, assessment criteria, and also more details on the funding available. On this page on the website, you will also find a raft of frequently asked questions. So we have put the frequently asked questions together based on the questions that were asked in the previous application round. So we do hope that most of the questions are covered in there, but anything that isn't covered, we have an email address that you can send your queries to. And if you see at the bottom of the slide on the right-hand side, that email address, I will, before the end of the webinar, I'll copy and paste that into the chat so that you have that also. But just to emphasize again, on the website, the application portal is highlighted in red here, and it sits just underneath a picture, an illustration of some bees in a chamber, which is based on one of the research projects our postdoc fellow did during their time at the university. But the application portal is it features just below that illustration. Thanks, Alicia. And then finally, just a summary based on our experience of previous applicants and applications, what the best practice advice is from us. So obviously, first off, check the fellowship eligibility and criteria and guidelines carefully. We've already had a question about eligibility for male and female candidates, and we welcome both. Please do read the information provided on our website carefully. Everything around eligibility and criteria is and should be covered there. Start preparing your application early. We did have applicants in the previous cohort that didn't successfully apply because they didn't complete their applications in time. So if you're interested and eligible, please, we strongly encourage you to start preparing your application early so that you've got sufficient time to review it, to revise it, and to submit it. Talk to your references and your head of department, as mentioned. We will be contacting your head of department during stage 1 and stage 2 of the process. So it's really it's a good idea to manage their expectations prior to that, just to let them know to expect that we will be in touch. And avoid last minute submissions because, as I've mentioned, anything that is received after the submission date and time, unfortunately, won't be accepted. And we also ask you not to contact Oxford faculty during the application process. It's not required during the process. If you are selected and successful in joining the fellowship, our team will coordinate you and identify a host for you whose expertise aligns with your project. Yeah, if you have any doubts and want to contact us with any questions around the application process, as mentioned, the email address does feature on the website, and I'll pop it in the chat, but it's sais@dtc.ox.ac.uk. Thank you, Alicia. Thanks, everybody.
Great. Thanks so much, Wendy. Just to wrap up the kind of formal presentation parts of this webinar, I want to speak a bit about life in Oxford. During that second year, again, moving to Oxford is very exciting, but can also be very daunting. Oxford is not a traditional, I mean, it is quite a traditional institution, and in being that, it is a bit different than many universities. So I just wanted to demystify just a couple points about that before we move on. So just to clarify, we've mentioned departments and colleges throughout this webinar a little bit. You'll have a host in a department, but you'll also be affiliated with a college. So what does that mean? Within the Oxford system, each researcher can belong to multiple different academic communities. So the department is kind of the more standard structure that you would expect in many universities. There's departments by subject area. So there's a department of engineering science, or there's a department of biology, that kind of thing. This is your primary academic home. That's where you'll likely have your desk with your host research group. It's the main kind of academic subject-specific home. We also speak a bit about divisions. So within Oxford, departments are grouped into divisions. For instance, there's a division MPLS, Mathematical, Physical, and Life Sciences, that you'll hear us possibly speaking about because it's the division that contains most of the departments that host our fellows. So that's just a grouping of departments. So that kind of is straightforward. But what are these colleges? So colleges are these kind of hybrid residential and academic communities. If you're attending Oxford as an undergraduate student, you tend to live in college. Like there's a physical building for each college or several buildings. And you tend to live there at least in your first couple of years. And in doing that, it provides students both pastoral support and they have many of their kind of tutorials and classes there. As a faculty member, it still provides this kind of joint academic and social community. So where you're not going to be in a college only with people in your department, the faculty members affiliated with your college will be across departments, different parts of the university, but they come together in this kind of hub at the college for things like formal dinners or different kind of social events. There's also different facilities that different colleges offer, such as, some have gyms or some have, many have their own independent libraries and different spaces you can use for events and things like that. So it offers you a space for that kind of more interdisciplinary and social, yet still academic in terms of being within the Oxford community. It's a space for kind of that kind of networking. There's 4 colleges that are affiliated with the fellowship, and yes, you will be affiliated to one of them. So just hope that clears up a little bit. You can feel free to ask questions about how that works if you would like. And just to kind of clue things off, living in Oxford's pretty nice. Those of us on the call have all, spent lots of time. The support team spent lots of time in Oxford, and we hope you'll find it's a lovely place to live for your second year. It's a compact city. It's very walkable. It's got lots of green space. There's, plenty of kind of historic buildings, and I mean, in the background behind me, you could kind of see the overview. But there's lots of green space, beautiful architecture, as well as lots of community events. There's plenty of kind of fairs, festivals, markets. Lots of these events are quite family friendly. So if you are coming with family for your second year, it's a great place I think, for kids to be. And yeah, there's also a great cultural scene. So there's plenty of live music. There's theater. There's also some, quirky traditions. I've put a picture of the May morning Morris dancers on the slide. That's something you might get to experience if you wake up at 6 in the morning on the 1st of May in your second year. But plenty of things that you can enjoy in your second year. And the support team will be, available to help you with both the logistics of settling into Oxford and, finding your space within the city. So with all that said, I think now we move into our Q&A. So as we said at the beginning, if you have any questions that have come up throughout the session, please do put them in that Q&A function. Wendy will be moderating this part of it and directing questions as appropriate. And yes, please do try and focus on questions that you think might be useful for the broader group of applicants who are on the call. So Wendy, do you want to take it away?
Thank you, Alicia. It might be worth going back to the slide that covers off the timeline of when the portal opens. We go back a bit because we've already had a few. There we are. We've had a few questions on that, so I think that's probably going to be the most useful. So in terms of the questions we've had so far, and we have followed these up with answers, the first question was around whether the webinar is being recorded. Yes, it is, and the recording will be made available. Then we had a question on requesting the link to the website for the application process. And just as a reminder, I've put the website address in the chat for everybody. The next question was if there was a requirement for an applicant to get the support of a host or mentor for their application. We did cover this, but just to remind everyone, we don't require at this stage. We do require, obviously, that your head of department gives their support for this application at both stages 1 and 2, but we don't require you to identify a host or a mentor at stages 1 and 2. Can a mail scientist apply, as I mentioned? Yes, absolutely. Then we had a question around whether any specific degrees are required for the fellowship, and the answer is no. No specific degrees are required. We require that candidates are or at the assistant or associate professor level or equivalent at their home institutions. And then again, the question around the web portal mentioned that women scientists will be given preference. We do encourage applications from female researchers. Deadline for the ongoing call, we have the slide that illustrates that now, but just again to reiterate, stage 1 opens at 12 noon Greenwich Mean Time on the 16th of January, closes at 12 noon Greenwich Mean Time on the 23rd of February, and stage 2 opens at 12 noon Greenwich Mean Time on the 23rd of March, and closes at 12 noon British Summer Time on the 13th of April. Next question Is this opportunity open to non-PhD holders? It is open to non-PhD holders. We do require, however, that individuals are employed at the assistant or associate professor or equivalent level at their home institution. Another question about the timeline, which we've covered. Another question around qualifications. Is the opportunity open to master's holders? Yes, it is. We do not require a PhD. The next question is around understanding when the fellowship for the next cohort will begin. And the date for that is October 2026. So if you were to be successful and join the next fellowship, that starts in October 2026. Then we've had a question around an assistant. So who is an assistant in your context? This usually means someone who has a permanent or longer term contract with an institution who has teaching responsibilities and is an independent researcher. The candidate must be working in the mentioned four or any area of background. And yes, that's correct. And just a reminder, those three areas are climate change, environment and biodiversity, food and water scarcity, and STEM underpinning biomedical research. Thanks, Alicia. Read my mind. Is it compulsory to be at Oxford for the entire duration of the second year? We do ask fellows that you're here for the vast majority of the second year, except for short visits back home or to travel to conferences. So yes, we do ask that you make yourself available for the majority of the second year. Assessment criteria for stage one, that is all available on the website, which is posted into the team chat. May I go to know if a current AFOX Initiative Fellow can apply for this fellowship as well? Yes, of course, as long as you meet our eligibility criteria. So that's all the questions we've had along the way. It will be appreciated if the slides of the presentation can be shared with the attendees. Like I said, the Zoom webinar is going to be recorded, so the slides will be available as part of that. And then we're all up to date there with the questions, Alicia. I don't know if there's anything else that you'd like to emphasize whilst we wait for more questions.
Yeah, thanks, Wendy. That was an absolute whistle-stop tour of the questions. Bravo. I would just say Wendy's covered most of the kind of logistic details in quite specific detail, but I maybe want to invite Ben in case you had any reflections on the questions regarding the kind of degrees and eligibility based on whether or not someone is career stage and things like that, to maybe just speak a bit about because assistant or associate professor level can be a bit can mean different things in different contexts. So would you possibly want to offer some clarity about the stage of researcher that is that we're aiming to support in the program?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Alicia. It is tricky because in different institutions, in different contexts, as you've said, people doing the same job can have very different job titles. So typically what we're looking for is someone who has a degree of independence in terms of setting their own research agenda. That's one part of, I think, say, an assistant professor level position, is that you have a degree of independence in setting your own research agenda. Another part, which is very typical, is that you have often quite substantial teaching duties. That's not a prerequisite, but that's just to say that often characterizes an assistant professor level position. And I guess the final thing is that you usually at that level, you may have either a longer term contract with your research institution, or you may have a permanent contract with that institution. The one thing I do want to highlight that was one of the questions is that we don't have any particular preferences over individuals' ages. We recognize that individuals, the path they take towards that given level, may be quite unique in different contexts. So we have no preference over ages.
Yeah, thanks very much, Ben. On that note as well, I also just wanted to clarify, since there was a couple of questions Wendy had flagged in the chat, we've mentioned a few times that we definitely encourage applications from female candidates. Males are also very welcome to apply. Male candidates are very welcome. We have, one of our current fellows, Rohit, is, a man. It's not that there is a preference necessarily within the criteria for female candidates. It's just that we would encourage applications from female candidates. Any other reflections from other panelists about the question so far? Or if not, I'll hand back to Wendy in case anything else has come in.
We've just got a question that Ben is typing an answer to on when exactly will the 6 years working limit be counted? Ben, do you want to just touch on that?
Yes, I've just typed in an answer in the Q&A. It's at the time of application is when we're counting backwards from, if that makes sense. And it is a subtlety. It's not 6 years since you joined your institution that we're counting. It's 6 years from when you began your current position. So, for example, if you were previously an assistant professor and 2 years ago you got promoted to an associate professor, then by our counter, that would be 2 years you'd been in your current faculty appointment and you would be eligible to apply for this position.
Yeah, great. That's really helpful. Some of these criteria are, there are subtleties, so feel free to ask any clarifying questions about any of them.
I guess I just wanted to highlight something that I think sometimes comes up, which is around the eligibility of a particular research area. In particular, sometimes people ask us, I work in the social sciences in one of the three application areas that we've listed. I think that what we ask when people are applying is that because they are going to be coming into a part of our university which is in the sciences rather than the social sciences, we genuinely ask that the majority of their research could be classified as being the mathematical, physical, and life sciences research rather than in the social sciences. But obviously, where exactly one draws the line there is a sort of subtle distinction. And that's one of those things where you can feel free to get in contact with us via the email address that's been shared earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an important clarification. We're well aware that again, we encourage interdisciplinary research as well. So you might be, taking an example from my own life, an engineer who often works with geographers as social scientists. And as long as your core research really focuses in that relevant area that is within the mathematical, physical, and life sciences, that's great. Your collaboration across disciplines is encouraged, in fact. So long as we can find you a home within the core sciences. Wendy, has there been anything else come in to clarify?
There has. Again, Ben is picking up on the first, which I'll just read out. So it's a follow-up on short visits that can be accommodated during the year in Oxford. And the question is, can we do it twice a year in the second year? And yes, that would be reasonable. There are no specific stipulations on duration of visits, but we do, for the benefit of the fellow and the fellowship, we do try and limit that to a few weeks maximum away from Oxford.
Yeah, I would just add that typically the university operates with certain closure dates that are standard within the UK. We recognize they may not align with the time that it may be best for you to be home based on other, cultural or family reasons. But you're pretty safe to assume that, for instance, over the designated Christmas period, you might want to visit home. That would be a time when there wouldn't be, your host would likely also be on holiday. People within the UK also do tend to take some time within July or August as some kind of summer holiday. That will be towards the end of your stay. So it would, I guess, be up to you whether you felt like you would want a short visit home at that point, or if you would rather just wait until the end of your second year. But that's another time where it might be a little bit more conducive if should you want to have another time at home. Just to clarify how the calendar tends to work here.
Thank you, Alicia. So we have a couple more questions. Shall we talk these through, Ben? So this question is,
Sure.
what about applicants who've studied abroad already? This individual spent 4 years doing a PhD in Europe, but is a full citizen, a resident of an African country. Does this disadvantage them?
I think this is a really, really good question. I think that one of the things I want to highlight is that in stage one of the applications, we are asking individuals to, if we could actually go to that slide to the stage one, that might be helpful, Alicia. Thank you. Yes, so question 5 here on our list is that one thing we are trying to do with this fellowship is that we are trying to initiate new collaborations between research groups, research institutes, individuals that haven't had the opportunity to organize them previously. So we'll be looking for that as a key part of stage one, and we're really looking for creative thinking here. How is this really going to change things at your home institution? That's not to say that we won't take applications or forward from people who have done PhDs, say abroad, say in Europe. It's just that what we would want is evidence that actually taking part in this fellowship is going to lead to a substantial change in sort of research links between you and your institution and those elsewhere. Should I take the second question as well that's here?
Yes, please. I think it's around eligibility. So the question is, I am a social scientist, but my ongoing research and proposed study during the fellowship is related to climate change and environmental science.
I think this is one of those questions where I would need a little bit more information about what you're actually doing in terms of your research to be able to comment exactly on whether it was eligible or not. It's up to you. You can either type your question here, or also feel free to just get in contact with us via the email address that was given previously.
Does that put us up to date with questions, Wendy?
It does, yes.
Excellent. I guess as more questions have come in, again, any panelists who haven't come in who have any reflections on what's been said, feel free.
There's a question that I can answer. Somebody has requested the email address. Oh, that Ben has very efficiently typed in.
Sorry.
It's SAIIS at dtc.ox.ac.uk. It is in the chat. I'll pop it in again just in case you missed it the first time round. But just to repeat, the email address is SAIIS at dtc.ox.ac.uk. We do have another eligibility question, and this individual is a mathematical physicist working on AI. Is it okay to apply using AI in the mentioned fields? And I think, again, Ben, if you could, yes, sorry. Oh, Elise, you're going to pick that one up?
Oh, yeah, I absolutely can. It just looked like Ben might have been typing. Absolutely. So that's one thing that we also, it's another subtlety that's important to clarify is that if you are coming from a more kind of, quantitative background, something like, what you've described, and you want to transition into applying AI within these fields, that's absolutely fine. So there's a subtlety in that this fellowship does not support kind of core, like foundational AI development research. So if your intention was to build the models which could serve as foundational models and, in a more general sense, probably not the right fit. But if you wanted to move into applying AI within these fields, you would be more than eligible. Ben, anything to add on that?
I think, I think you've answered it, Alicia. I think, maybe I'll just say one more thing, which is that Alicia's completely right. You're eligible to apply. What we will be looking for in your application is evidence, though, that you know sufficiently about the domain area in which you're applying AI in order for it to really realistically lead to a change in that area. So if you are in that category, which is someone working in AI and you're looking to apply AI in one of the three aforementioned themes, then we really want to we really expect that you are sufficiently knowledgeable in that area and you're talking to people in that field and you're sort of demonstrating really that this is going to lead to a big change in that area. I'd say it is a fairly common failure mode in our applications, which is that someone is, let's say, doing AI and they think that just the application of AI is going to solve all of the problems in a particular research area. And sometimes that's a little bit wishful thinking. And so we do just expect that people have done the research and they know enough to know that it's not just some sort of magic wand that you wave over some data and it helps everything. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Ben. I think one more thing to highlight is that as the fellowship is intended to kind of advance your career, it's worth reflecting on whether you want your career ultimately to be in one of these fields. If yes, great, this is a perfect place to launch that. If if that would just be kind of a convenience aspect of, oh, I'll work on this problem for these 3 years for this fellowship, it might not be the right fit at the end of the day if you want to advance your career into another field ultimately. So just keep that in mind.
Thanks, Alicia. And just one question that Ben is answering at the moment is another qualifying criteria question. I have no publications, but I have some working papers only. I'm a PhD candidate. Do I qualify?
I'm happy to answer this one in live if you like, rather than type it. I think that we do recognize that in different fields and in different contexts, it can be more or less standard to have lots of publications by a certain point in one's career. And we also recognize that there may be structural reasons why people aren't able to necessarily have the publications at a given point in one's career. So there are no explicit stipulations on publications that we require of people. You've mentioned working papers. As part of stage 2 of our application process, we are asking that someone point us towards publications, and I think that maybe can be broadly defined to also include working papers, as long as they are sort of put somewhere in an open source location or somewhere where other people can actually visit these things. I think that we would accept working papers. I think that's fine. One thing, though, to say is that you mentioned that you are a PhD candidate. That is in of itself okay, but we are still requiring that people are operating at either the assistant or the associate professor level at the point of application. So just want to double check that you're eligible on those criteria. Otherwise, it should be okay.
Yeah, and if that's not a criteria that you're meeting currently, it might be worth keeping an eye out for the next round of the postdoctoral fellowships. Again, it sounds like that could be an option depending on what that job title that you hold is. But we frequently have people who are PhD candidates just kind of getting towards the end of their PhD applying to that scheme.
Thanks, Alicia. I think this is another question that Ben can answer live. How can an analytical or environmental chemist apply AI? So I think this individual is just looking for some examples around the application of AI in their field.
Thanks, Wendy. I guess that there's a whole raft of different ways that one could be doing this. Speaking about some projects that I've seen in the past in these areas are, for example, in environmental chemistry, often one is seeking to explore the levels of potentially harmful chemicals in the environment, for example, through river systems. Um, Now, one way that I've seen in the past that people have approached this a question through the lens of AI is that uh, you may have a range of measurements of the level of these harmful chemicals taken spatiotemporally, and you want to, for example, combine these spatiotemporal measurements of the levels of harmful chemicals in order to produce, for example, risk maps or to be able to quantify how these levels of harmful chemicals are changing over time. Now, AI methods can probably help one with that if you've got enough data. I want to, as part of this, also just clarify what exactly we mean by AI, because it is a slippery definition and different people mean different things. So, what we really mean by AI is the application of computational statistical methods to solve problems in data. We don't necessarily have a particularly strong view that you should be using the most recent and most advanced AI method to approach answering these questions. What we do ask is that people know enough um, to know that their particular research question can be answered with the relevant piece of AI that they are using. So we're not asking people to use the fanciest AI methods. We're just asking that they use the most appropriate ones. And I guess as part of that as well, I'll just comment just to say that we really don't expect people to be experts in AI. The point of this fellowship is that you will learn about AI methods, but we do expect that you know enough to know that there are pitfalls in using AI methods and that the methods that you have chosen are likely appropriate. And that will certainly be part of, if you're invited to interview, part of the questions will be around assessing that you have thought enough about the appropriateness of the AI methods to answer your question. It looks like at the moment we don't have any open Q&A questions, I think.
Yes, we are all up to date at the moment, but there is still time if anybody has any more questions they'd like to ask.
It looks like Talabi has his hand up or his or her hand up. I'm just wondering, oh, and Hams also has her hand up. I think Talabi just at the moment what we're doing is we're asking that people ask the questions in the Q&A functionality. So if you do have your hand up, then we just ask that you ask that in the Q&A. Hems, did you also have something you wanted to add?
No, sorry, that was by mistake. I was checking the Q&A. Sorry.
All good.
I'll just flick back to the eligibility criteria, as that's a key one, I think. It's coming up.
So it looks like we've got
Talaba's questions coming in. Must the two samples of written work be related to the proposed study?
So I guess I can comment on this, which is that I think the short answer is no, in the sense of like your proposed work that you're suggesting as part of your application can be distinct from the area where you've published previously. However, I guess what we are trying to get to in looking at that published work is trying to assess whether or not you have the experience in the particular domain science area around the area in which you're trying to apply AI in your fellowship. So there's a slight subtlety here. It doesn't have to be exactly the same thing as what you're proposing to do on the fellowship, but I guess that what we are trying to do is use that information to assess that you know enough about your domain science area to be able to make meaningful contributions during the fellowship.
Okay, so we do have another question. Do you prioritise diversity in topics that fellows pursue? For instance, if one works in an area similar to the one of the successful fellows with different research questions, would this count as a negative?
I'm happy to start this one, and Alicia or anyone else, please feel free to fill in anything I miss. I guess. I can see definitely positives of having people that do similar things across our cohort. I mean, by the very nature of the fact that we are hiring people within three research themes means that we will necessarily get people who are doing kind of perhaps similar things. And so I don't think that we would count that as a negative. Indeed, I could see some positives of that. I can also see positives of having people that are doing quite distinct research topics. So I think that it won't be counted as a negative for sure. I don't know, Alicia, if there's anything you wanted to add there.
No, completely agreed. I think the only circumstance where you might want to be careful is if it's precisely the same research question and methods as a current fellow. But that seems quite unlikely, and working in the same field with a different aim or with different methods is completely fine.
Thank you both. So we've got a follow-up question from Talabi. For instance, I have supervised master dissertation in the proposed area and currently supervising an undergraduate in the area, but yet to be published in the area.
So I think that helps to kind of clarify where you're coming from in terms of your question. I still think, to reiterate what Ben said, it can be advantageous, for instance, even if the specific project that you're proposing, most of the work has been, to date to scope that out, has been done by your master's students or an undergraduate student. If you have papers within that kind of broader scientific discipline or domain that you could use as evidence that you are supervising those students on that topic for a reason, presumably. So if you have papers that could justify that, that would be excellent. I mean, I can just use my own scientific background as an example. For instance, I'm an energy researcher, and I apply machine learning methods for, predicting energy service needs and energy demand and things like that. Were I applying to this fellowship, perhaps I wouldn't have a paper on that specific machine learning application I could send in, but maybe I had papers about my previous research on energy access or energy systems planning, or that show my background in that topic area, if not the methods themselves. I hope that kind of gives a little bit of an example to clarify.
Thank you, Alicia. Do participants need to have specific memberships of professional bodies, particularly in this area, in order to qualify?
The answer is no, as far as I am aware.
Nice and easy. It looks like a follow-up question from someone who's anonymous. It's quite difficult to string it all together, but it looks like a build. If my publication were in physics and I want to switch to climate change, see if I can try and work out.
I'm guessing that the application, I'm guessing that the question is saying I maybe don't have uh, publications in an area of climate change. And I want to do some work in climate change. Am I still eligible to apply? So I'm going to answer the question as if that was the case. If that person, that if this wasn't the question you're answering, then feel free to write the question underneath. So I guess I'm going to go back to something I said earlier, which is, or we've said earlier, which is that we are just looking to check that people know enough about that particular area to know that what they're planning on doing within that research area is likely to lead to meaningful change in that discipline. I won't say that it's impossible that someone who has not worked in, say, climate change previously could do work in climate change that was meaningful, but it might be quite a lot harder than if you are already working in that area of climate change. So I would just say that, what we're really looking for, I think it's fair to say, is we're really looking for people who are domain science experts in that area who have noticed a gap that AI can plug. Again, that doesn't mean that you wouldn't be eligible. It just means that that's the kind of thing that we're really aiming for in terms of funding during this fellowship.
Thank you, Ben. Okay, so we've got a slight nuance here. If an applicant is an African national currently studying or in the final year of a PhD program in Europe, but still works as an associate at an African university, are they eligible to apply?
I'm happy to start this answering this. I think that there's various different ways that this could or couldn't work. I think that if you are doing a PhD and you will not have completed your PhD by the time of doing the fellowship, then you wouldn't be eligible because we're really looking for people who are operating at the assistant or the associate professor level at your home institution in either an African country or in India. So if you're at a European institution here and you were doing a PhD, then which wouldn't have completed by the time you would be due to start your fellowship, then you would not be eligible. If instead you were going to complete your PhD before the time in which the fellowship would start, and you also happen to be at that home institution, either an assistant professor or an associate professor level or equivalent, then you could be eligible for application, if that makes sense. So it does depend on the specifics of where you are in that PhD journey. The only other thing that I will highlight as part of answering this question is just to reiterate something we said earlier, which is that what we are really looking for, as even part of stage one, is to highlight just what difference this fellowship is going to make in terms of initiating new collaborations between you, your institution, and institutions elsewhere, which could be, for example, institutions within your home country, the other fellows institutions. It could also be collaborations with institutions in, say, either India or Africa, depending on where you are. And it also could be new collaborations in terms of, for example, with Oxford. These are all possible ways in which new research links could be initiated. And so we're looking for some really creative thinking in answering that question, if that makes sense.
That's great. Thank you, Ben. And then the last question at the moment is, can I share my master's student dissertation along with the 2 research samples?
I think that I'm happy to take this one. I think that if that master's dissertation has been published in some form, which could be, as we said before, it could be a working paper, for example, then that's fine. Um, so it could form one of the two research samples that you could share as part of your application. But we do require that it is out there in the public domain in some form.
Yeah, I would also just say that if you're thinking about sharing it as kind of above and beyond what's requested, generally I would discourage applicants from providing extraneous additional documents with their application. It makes it more difficult to review, and it's not something that would be favorable. So as Ben said, if you wanted to include it as a working paper, as one of the two, that's fine. But not to kind of send it through as a supplementary document.
Thank you, Alicia. Another question on qualifying criteria. So this individual, my core is diet and nutrition, which can work around food security. However, will have small elements of AI to it, which are minimal. Does that work?
Ben, go for it.
So I think that we are, as part of the fellowship is a training fellowship in AI. And so we are hoping that AI, or the application of AI rather, will form a real central core to what you're doing. So if it was somewhat peripheral, the application of AI, or a very, very small part of your proposal, then I think that this might not be quite the right call for you in this case. Obviously, it does sort of depend somewhat subtly as to just how much of your application is being used or it involves AI as to whether you'd be eligible. But we are really hoping that AI will be somewhat central and is likely to lead to meaningful change in your application area.
Yeah, I would just add that another kind of failure mode that we do see in applications is someone who's a very talented domain specialist, clearly, and what wants to advance their career, and has a large scope of work beyond the kind of interest in using a machine learning or AI method, and is and that method is inadequately kind of addressed within their application. So if it forms only a small amount of the proposed work, that that could pose a difficulty in your application.
Thanks, Alicia. And yeah, one of the previous individuals who asked a question just followed up with a thank you. They're not trained in AI to provide greater detail. So I think in that respect, they would fulfill the criteria. But like you say, it depends how significant the AI would be in advancing their research.
Yeah, I think that it's a fair question that this person is kind of raising, I guess, which is, I think, how can they write credibly about AI methods as part of their application, or how can they know enough about AI methods to be able to actually know and be able to communicate as part of their application just how these methods will help? And yeah, so it is a fair question. And just to be clear, we are not requiring that people are AI experts at the time of application. This is mainly a training fellowship where we give you the space to learn about these methods. In terms of if I was in your position and I was applying or thinking about applying to this particular call, then the sort of things that I might consider doing is doing a bit of kind of desktop research, trying to understand how others, for example, in your discipline have applied AI. I can imagine that you might be able to find publications in your particular area which might hint at that. I'd also consider potentially if there are people within your faculty or university or research institute who you do know are applying these things to try and seek those out and have a conversation with them and try and get their view on things. I think some of our best applicants have done that key bit of research beforehand to be able to understand enough about AI methods to know that they're going to be useful. So those are some of the types of things that I would consider doing at this stage too. And we've got another question in the chat. If we are postdoctoral researchers in one of the fields mentioned, are we eligible? I think that the answer is probably no to this. I'm afraid. We have two different schemes. We have a postdoctoral AI in science scheme, which is also funded by Schmidt Sciences, and we have, which is the conversation on this call, our faculty scheme, which is aimed at people at the assistant or the associate professor level.
Thank you, Ben. So I think at this point, a final call for questions. We have quite a chunky one. As a social scientist, I'm broadly interested in forced displacement and its drivers, in which climate change is one. In the past, I've published on conflict-induced displacement. In my proposed study for the fellowship, I want to use AI to address another driver of forced displacement in Africa related to environment science. Would my previous publication on conflict and displacement count in my favour?
I think so, from as best I can tell. I think that you are, so just to paraphrase to check my understanding, you are interested in drivers of population displacement, and previously you have done work which has looked at how displacement responds to conflict. But in this fellowship, or in your proposal for this fellowship, you're planning on looking at another driver of forced displacement. I think that, to me at least, that demonstrates that because you've probably published in this area or this broad area previously, that it would be sort of, those publications would be enough to demonstrate that you are sort of knowledgeable in this area. I think that's fine. I think in terms of the application of AI to this area, I think it sounds like a reasonable one. It sounds like, whilst you are a social scientist, I can sort of see how using AI to look at drivers of displacement, particularly those to do with environmental areas, might certainly be applicable within the scope of this fellowship.
Yeah, completely agreed. I think that's the type of domain expertise, presuming the migration aspect is really your domain specialty. That's the domain expertise that you would be showing with those papers. If you did have any previous interaction with, the environmental or climate change aspects of migration, might be worth considering putting in any papers that might have dealt with that, even tangentially, alongside conflict. But if not, then I think that it still shows your domain expertise.
Thank you both. So that concludes our questions for now. Quite happy to keep it open for another couple of minutes. It looks like Tarabi tried to raise their hands again. As mentioned, we're just taking questions in the Q&A, but what I would suggest, if you've got any more detailed questions on your circumstances, perhaps if you send an email to the inbox, we can cover it off there. That's a couple of minutes past now. We've got no more questions. I suggest that we close the webinar. Back to you, Alicia.
Great. Well, I think this was really productive in terms of the questions asked. Covered a lot of points that may not have been totally clear from the slides. Again, we'll be happy to post this recording in case any of that information comes up during your application process, so you can refer back to it. If you have any more specific questions about your circumstances, again, as Wendy said, feel free to get in touch via the email address that's been put in the chat. That can be, there can be these nuances about specific circumstances. So we totally understand and happy to answer specific questions then. But for the moment, I think that means that we're going to conclude the webinar for today. I'll, stop sharing briefly so we can all kind of put ourselves back on the screen. But it was lovely to, interact with all of the participants today. We really look forward to receiving your applications, and we wish you the best of luck. Feel free to get in touch via the inbox as provided or reference any of the resources that we've shared today. So yeah, thank you very much for your participation and have a lovely day.